السنة مثل سفينة نوح، من ركبها نجا ومن تركها غرق.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. So with the aid and assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we begin with our third lesson with regards to studying the book of al-Allamah al-Muhaddith Abu al-Wafa ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī rahmatullah alayhi, which is called al-Hadith ka Madhhab, in correspondence to today's date, which is the 22nd of al-Jamād al-Thani, corresponding to the 10th of March 2018. Like I mentioned that today's lesson is going to be about the biography or the tarjuma of the Shaykh rahmatullah alayhi. So the first thing which we need to know about the Shaykh is his name, his nasab, his lineage, and his kunya. So with regards to his name, then the Shaykh's name was ThanāʻAllāh, or Sanāʻullah, like they say in Urdu. Sanāʻullah bin Khidarjo al-Kashmiri. So the Shaykh's name was Sanāʻullah, like they say in Urdu, and I will pronounce it in Urdu, Sanāʻullah. And his father's name was Khidarjo, and the Shaykh was Kashmiri, originally from Kashmir. That is in relation to the Shaykh's name. Has everybody got that? The kunya of the Shaykh was Abu al-Wafa. He was known as Abu al-Wafa, and the laqab, or the names which he was given, or the titles that he was given, was Fatihul Qadiyan, Imam al-Munadhireen, Shaykh al-Islam, Hujjatul Islam, Imam al-Mutakallimin, Asadu Punjab, the Lion of Punjab, and Sayyidu al-Hadith, the leader of al-Hadith. With regards to the Shaykh's family, did everybody get some of the titles which the Shaykh was known amongst, or became famous amongst? He was known as Fatihul Qadiyan, the one who defeated the Qadianis and was the victorious one with regards to the Qadianis. The Shaykh has an autobiography with regards to himself known as Sawaneh Hayat. You can find the Shaykh's tarjuma or biography in a few books that have been authored by his students. One of them is known as At-Tadhkirah. The other is known as the Nur-e-Tawheed. Also you will find in Nuzhatul Khawatir. And you'll also find that Shaykh Safiur Rahman al-Mubarakpuri rahimahullah wrote a biography of him, and many other of his students have written biographies of the Shaykh. So the Shaykh was of Kashmiri origin. The Shaykh came from a Kashmiri family that had migrated to Amritsar in Punjab, which is part of India. Become an orphan at an early age. And it is known that the Shaykh went through some great hardships when he was small. And these hardships that the Shaykh went through made the Shaykh stronger. That we find that the Shaykh rahimahullah, at an early age, his father passed away. At the age of 14, his mother passed away. So at the age of 7, his father passed away, and at the age of 14, when his mother passed away. And at the early age, if you look at the Shaykh of, this was with regards to the date that the Shaykh was born, and the Shaykh was born in Amritsar in India, which is today currently in India, in the city of Amritsar in Punjab, in the year 1287 after Hijri, corresponding to 1868. And at the early age, the Shaykh had an interest of learning about the deen. He wanted to seek knowledge. But because his parents had passed away at an early age, his circumstances did not permit him to go and seek knowledge, that this wish remained in his heart, that he wanted to seek knowledge at an early age, until at the age of 14, he was sitting at a shop where they would repair the clothes of the people, and that a customer came, and he was from amongst the scholars of that region, and this scholar gave ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī, he said, I need these clothes repaired, stitched up. So ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī himself, he stitched up these clothes, repaired them. But when the scholar came back and saw this work of his, which was done with great itqān, with great preciseness, that he became so happy and started praising him. And he asked Abu al-Wafa ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī some questions about the deen, and Shaykh ThanāʻAllāh answered them correctly. And he was amazed at his intelligence and his sharpness. He said to the boy, Ya bunay, oh my son, how much have you studied? So Shaykh ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī would put his head down and look down, and in a state of remorse, and he started crying. Tears started to flow from his eyes, until he responded back with a voice which had the background of sadness in it. He said, I haven't studied anything because my parents died. He goes, how am I to study? Who will teach me? And who will earn for me a little luqma that I need to earn for myself in order to live? And it is for this reason that I do this job, that I stitch up these clothes and repair these clothes, and with this I support the family. So the scholar said to him, listen my son, work hard, because you are an extraordinary intelligent boy, and you will become successful one day. And if you don't study the deen, then you would have oppressed yourself. Since that day, ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī started to study and learn, whilst at the same time working. So this story about this scholar coming to the shop where ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī rahmatullah alayh shows, or we can understand from this story, or this story tells us, first of all, the hard circumstances some of the scholars lived in. That there were people who lived in the past who had the desire to seek knowledge, al-ilm al-shar'i, but their circumstances and the poverty did not permit them to seek knowledge. And today in the West, the Muslims have everything at their disposal, and they can't seek knowledge. I'm talking about those who call themselves Salafis. Everything at their disposal, and they can't seek knowledge. From the resources to the social media, sitting in their houses, in their comfort zones, they can't seek knowledge. That's why you will see this Salafi who claims himself to be Salafi, that if you met him 20 years ago, he was still on book 1 of Medina, and after 20 years, he's still talking about book 1 of Medina. Now, if you met him 20 years ago, he was talking about so and so, and after 20 years, he's still talking about the same so and so. If you met him 20 years ago, he was talking about issues which are specifically for the scholars, and after 20 years, he's still talking about those issues. No production, no progression. This is the reality. Qeel wa qaal. The only thing that is mastered is qeel wa qaal. The only thing that is mastered is to cause fitna, harm the dawah, or put yourself forward to become a teacher or a leader, when in reality you've studied nothing, zilch. Do you brothers understand what I'm saying? The seriousness of this issue. The reality of England and the West. The condition of the Salafis, of those who claim themselves to be Salafis. The only thing that changes is the people. The qeel and qaal remains. That the one who calls himself to be Salafi cannot even study the 3 books of, or the 4 books of Medina University. Al-usul al-thalatha and qawaid al-arba is what we hear all the time. And I'm not talking about the layman, I'm talking those who claim themselves to be students of knowledge. Those who make them out to be from the talabat al-ilm or the halaqat al-ilm. This is who I intend. I do not intend the amatul nas. The second thing with regards to the story of Shaykh al-Islam Abu al-Wafa SanāʻAllāh Amritsarī rahmatullah alayh is the basira and the fatana of the alim, the scholar that visited him and spoke to him and asked him the questions. That an alim, a scholar, can see through the intelligent ones from the pretending ones. So you have the muta'allim and the muta'alim. The muta'alim is the one that pretends that he has studied and pretends that he knows, but he does not know. And the scholars know that he does not know. And he knows that there are scholars who will know that he does not know. The muta'alim, not the muta'allim. The muta'allim is the one who learns, and the muta'alim is the one who makes himself out to be, is that he is the one that learns. And I mentioned, with regards to usul al-thalatha and al-qawaid al-arba, till this day we have those who claim to be students of knowledge, that they are still not competent in al-usul al-thalath and qawaid al-arba. Hatta as-sa'a, till this day. And Allah knows best if they have attended the dawrat, course when the scholars come. So the scholar can see through people by examining the students or those who claim to have knowledge, just like Abul Wafa Sana'ullah Amritsari was examined by that teacher, that certain questions were asked to see the level, the placement test of this young boy. And the other thing that we find is that the scholars are always tested. The students of knowledge are always tested, and not everybody has a test. And from the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that when He wants and when He chooses somebody from amongst His slaves, that this slave will be the one who will hold the banner of Islam and defend Islam from its enemies, that He will send a test for that slave of His, just like He tested all the prophets and the messengers upon the same footsteps. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, al-amthal al-amthal. So that this slave becomes strong and he's able to confront the difficulties and the trials and the tribulations that will be directed to him. And that's why we find that the tarbiyah of Shaykh Abul Wafa Sana'ullah Amritsari was done upon sabr, tahammul, forbearance, at the times of difficulties from an early age. The hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Prophet ﷺ's father died before he was born. His mother died when he was young. He had to earn money to support himself and his family. He had the desire of seeking knowledge hidden in his heart. Circumstances would not permit him. But that encouragement from that scholar changed his entire life. And with the trials and the tribulations, he accepted the fact that he would have to struggle. But he should not postpone seeking knowledge. The next issue is with regards to the Shaykh's manners. Then he was known for having great manners. And he would always try to follow and adopt the manners of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That he would respect the elders, tawqir of the elders, and shafaqah, and be merciful to the young. Based upon the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They say that the administration of the magazine which he used to take out, Jarida al-Hadith, was something that became as a legend and as an example for others. The Shaykh was very generous. He would spend on his students of knowledge. And he would distribute books to them. And this is what we run from our elders. We call them the akabirin, our elders. All these scholars are the elders of those who are upon the way of the al-Hadith. We call them our akabirin. And it is from the example of Abul Wafa Sana'ullah Amritsari and others that I learned this example of being good to my students and aiding them and assisting them and giving them my time. And lastly, not forgetting, main point is to always gift them with books. With regards to his enemies, with regards to the enemies of the Shaykh, the Shaykh would adopt a methodology with those who he debated and those who he opposed, that he never ever exited or became neglectful, that the environment of the debate or the purpose of the debate was to maintain the standard of knowledge academically, and never to leave or abandon al-adab al-Islami, al-nahj al-ilm al-daqiq. And the amazing example that he had when he came to debating with others is that he was calm when he debated and never became angry. But he would always smile and answer back and respond back to the questions that were thrown to him with tranquility. بِكُلِّ إِطْمِنَانٍ وَوَقَارٍ. Tranquility. And as you know that Shaykh ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī was the official debater of the Ahlul Hadith, that he debated every single person, whether they were from the deviated sects or from the other religions and faiths, Christians and Hindus. The Shaykh debated every single person and defeated every single person. A track record of being victorious, a clear victory, that even the layman who may have attended would be able to see that ThanāʻAllāh is just too much for these people. And the Shaykh would visit the sick in their houses, to the extent that sometimes he would go and even visit the kuffar, the disbelievers. Go and visit them to soften their hearts towards Islam, the enemies of Islam. And one of the Hindus from the area would always refute the Muslims, and in particular the Shaykh himself. He heard that this man was sick, so he went and visited him. And the Shaykh was very humble. He was halim. He was a zahid. He was an abid. He was a person who bared hardships. He would give great importance to widows, to the orphans, and the students of knowledge. And today we find that many people give importance of aiding and assisting the widows and the orphans, but the students of knowledge are, in my opinion, the most neglected people on this earth. So this is with regards to the Shaykh's character. Shaykh's character was such that the students of knowledge were on the top of his list. And we know the famous story that many famous stories have been ascribed to the Shaykh, that the person who had tried to harm the Shaykh, tried to assassinate the Shaykh, when the Shaykh found out that his family was in need and had no money and had no food, this person was imprisoned. The Shaykh went to that family and supported them financially. But when this man was released, he was shocked and said, I tried to assassinate ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī and he was feeding my family. And just because of this great character, this person entered into Salafiyya. With regards to the Shaykh's being a person of knowledge, and many of the people had testified from his contemporaries of somebody who was a great man of knowledge. From amongst them, Abdul Rahman al-Mubarakfuri, who wrote the explanation of al-Jami' al-Kabir of Imam al-Tirmidhi, Sahibu Tuhfatul Ahwadi, praised the Shaykh. And the Muhaddith Shamsul Haq Adīmabadi, the one who wrote the explanation Awn al-Ma'bud and Ghayatul Maqsood of Sunan Abi Dawud, and King Abdul Aziz Rahmatullah alayh, and Shaykh al-Islam Nadir Hussain Dahlawi Rahmatullah alayh, and Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Najdi rahmatullah alayh, and Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Latif al-Najdi rahmatullah alayh. Not forgetting his teacher, Shaykh al-Islam Nadir Hussain Dahlawi rahmatullah alayh. This is with regards to some of the scholars, including King Abdul Aziz rahmatullah alayh, who had a very close personal relationship with Shaykh al-Islam Abu al-Wafa Sana'ullah Amritsari, and the Shaykh was the one who supported the king when the whole Muslim world had turned against him. This is with regards to those who testified with regards to the Shaykh's knowledge, and all the other scholars from Egypt and from other places, that the Shaykh rahmatullah alayh was somebody who had the support and who had testifications and testimonies from the scholars of that time. And this is something which the scholars always pay attention to, that you will find that the people of Fadl know the people of Fadl, the scholars know the scholars, so the scholars always praise the other scholars. And this is something which is known with regards to the Shaykh rahmatullah alayh, that his knowledge, his refutations, his debates became popular all around the world. With regards to the Shaykh's studies, and I mentioned that the story that happened with regards to when he was working at the shop, the Shaykh, when he started to seek knowledge, at first he sought knowledge in his city known as Amritsar, where he read and studied some of the books of the Farsi language. Then he went and studied with a Shaykh by the name of Ahmadullah Amritsari, where he studied some books with him. He studied some of the books of mantiq, rhetoric, and ilm al-kalam. And it was at that time that the scholars realized that this boy would go on in the near future, if Allah granted him life and knowledge, that he would destroy anybody that came in his way, because of the power and the mastering and the intelligence that he had with regards to the discipline of debating. So it was at the age of 14 that the Shaykh started, like I mentioned. And he mentions this himself in his autobiography. First, with regards to Abu al-Wafa Sana'ullah Amritsari seeking knowledge, number one, he started to seek knowledge locally at the age of 14 after the incident of the scholar that happened with regards to him repairing the clothes of the scholar. Number two, he studied the books of the Farsi in the Farsi language, and he studied Farsi. Number three, he studied the books of the Arabic language, such as the Shar al-Jami wal-Qubti. And after he studied those books locally, and he studied with a scholar, like I mentioned, Ahmadullah Amritsari, then he decided that he needed to move away from his city and seek knowledge of Hadith. Allahu Akbar. And at that time, he heard of a scholar by the name of al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī, who was from the major scholars of Hadith, and all from the Arabs and the non-Arabs would travel to him to seek knowledge of Hadith. And al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī was the Khalifa of Shaykh al-Islam Nadir Hussain Dahlawi, and he was blind. Abu al-Wafa Sana'ullah Amritsari said this in his own autobiography. Then it came to my mind that I should go and seek knowledge of hadith and go to the halaqat and the gatherings of al-Mannan Wazeerabadī so that I can be from amongst his students. And al-Mannan Wazeerabadī was in Punjab. And I went to him and I obtained an ijazah from him. After I had completed the expected curriculum that a student of knowledge must complete, the books of hadith, and in 1889 I was given an ijazah from al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī. And as you may not know the story of al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī, the Khalifa of Shaykh al-Islam Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi, that I read in his biography of al-Mannan Wazeerabadī, blind like Shaykh Abd Aziz bin Baz, that al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī, when he had the desire to go to Delhi to go and seek knowledge, he sat in a train, told the people that put me on a train, I need to go to Delhi and I need to go and study with the grand Shaykh of this time, Shaykh al-Islam Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi rahmatullah alayhi. So they put him on a train and he left from Punjab, I don't know, probably Punjab, from Wazeerabad, wherever the Shaykh was from. But we know that he settled in Punjab afterwards. That's where Sh ThānāʻAllāh Amritsarī studied with him from, in Punjab. As you know that Amritsar is in Punjab, in India. Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi rahmatullah alayhi would send students at the railway station to go and collect, when the trains would arrive, the freshmen, the new students, to come and study with him. Subhanallah, look at the ulama, of how much support, how much care, and how attentive and how much consideration they had for those who wanted to seek knowledge. How much support they gave. So as normal, the Shaykh would send students. But on this occasion, the Shaykh himself decided to go to the railway station. Shaykh al-Islam Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi. The train had arrived quite late at night, and the Shaykh was there waiting for al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī, a blind man, a blind boy. So the Shaykh took hold of his hand. He said, I've come to study at the camp of Shaykh al-Islam Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi. And wallahi, when we read about this madrasa, Nadhiriyah, in this time, the only madrasa that has any comparison to it was the madrasa of Shaykh Muqbil ibn Hadi al-Wadi rahmatullah alayhi. The simplicity in the Maj, which the Houthis, qatalahum Allah, destroyed them. Destroyed. So Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi rahmatullah alayhi takes hold of the hand of al-Mannan Wazeerabadī. He said, I've come to collect you. And al-Mannan Wazeerabadī said, take me to the madrasa of Shaykh Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi. I've come to study with him. So Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi, as you know, in the olden days, all your luggage was not in bags. It was all tied up. He picked up the luggage of al-Mannan Wazeerabadī, who was blind. Put it on his head, carried it, and took the hand of al-Mannan Wazeerabadī and said, come, I will take you to the madrasa. On the way to the madrasa, al-Mannan Wazeerabadī asked Shaykh Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi, how is the Shaykh? How is he? Is he good? I really want to study with him. I've come from a long way. I want to master hadith. Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi would say, Insha'Allah, Allah make it easy for you. Allah make it easy for you. Allah grant you what you have come here for. Nadvi Hussain Dehlawi did not tell him at any stage or at any point who he was. They reached the madrasa. The Shaykh dropped him off, and some of the students, they noticed that this blind man that had come, the one who had gone to collect him from the station, was the Shaykh himself. They were astonished at the humility and the humbleness of the Shaykh. Late at night, the next day, when Shaykh al-Mannan Wazeerabadī met the other students, he inquired. He said, there was a really nice man, nice student. Yesterday he came to collect me. He assisted me. He did everything for me. He didn't even give me the little chance to do anything. I really want to meet this student once again. The students, they started laughing. They said, that was no student. That was Shaykh al-Islam, our Shaykh Nadir Hussain Dehlawi. Allahu Akbar. The humility and the humbleness of the ulama of al-Hadith is inherited from scholar to scholar, from scholar to student. So this was with regards to al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī, the one who became the Khalifa of Nadir Hussain Dehlawi after he died. But at the time when Shaykh ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī studied under him, who was his first Shaykh in Hadith, Nadir Hussain Dehlawi was still alive. During the Shaykh's stay with al-Mannan Wazeerabadī rahmatullah alayh, Shaykh ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī had already started debating. He started debating with the priests, the missionaries that had come to India to spread their filth and their kufr. Abul Wafa ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī had entered the arena of debating to silence these. And then after this, Abul Wafa ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī decided, after graduating from Shaykh al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī, now he decided that he wanted to go to Delhi and he wanted to study with the Shaykh of his Shaykh, Al-Imam Sayyid Nadir Hussain Dehlawi rahmatullah alayh. He goes, I went there, and when I went there, I showed him my ijazah. I showed Nadir Hussain Dehlawi rahmatullah alayh my ijazah. Shaykh, I've studied with your student, al-Mannan Wazeerabadī rahmatullah alayh. And then I studied with the Shaykh, and the Shaykh gave me another ijazah. Then the Shaykh decided to go to Saharanpur. And do you guys know where Saharanpur is? And do you guys know what is in Saharanpur? This is the sad thing about the Salafis of the West, that they live in a country surrounded by Deobandis and Barelvis, and they don't know nothing about Saharanpur. And this is the reason that we have how many? 5, 6 students here amongst us only. I don't know how many from England are present here. Wallahi, in order for you to know about ad-da'wah to Salafiyya in England and being ignorant of these issues, show that you have no basira of the da'wah in the UK. And the amazing thing is that the enemies of the Salafi da'wah, the Deobandis, have full knowledge about the Salafis. Tullabi, listen to me very carefully. Can somebody give me the total number of Darul Ulooms of the Deobandis that we have in England? The Salafis have no Darul Ulooms in England. We don't have a single one. Zilch, 0. We have no Darul Uloom in the whole of England. In fact, we don't have no Darul Ulum in the whole of Europe. Just on Coventry Road itself, there's about 3 Darul Ulums in Small Heath in Birmingham that teach the complete curriculum, which is known as Dars-e-Nizami, which is taught in the Madaris of the Salafis, the Barelvis and the Deobandis in the subcontinent. In Leicester itself, where I come from, there's at least 7 Darul Ulums. How many? Just in Leicester. Are you listening? And the Salafis do a weekend conference and they get excited and they think, wow, done something so great. I organized a weekend conference. The Deobandis are at least 75 years ahead of the Salafis. And the condition of the Salafis of today, because everybody wants to be a chief and nobody wants to be an Indian, the chances of us achieving anything are very low, and Allah knows best. But let me tell you that the 2 main Darul Ulums of UK are 2. Darul Ulum Bury, which was the first Darul Ulum in the whole of England, established roughly in the year 1975, before many of us were born. Something which is under your nose, in front of your faces, great establishments of our enemies, with regards to which we have no knowledge. What a shame upon us. Darul Ulum Bury was established under the instructions of Maulana Muhammad Zakaria al-Kandahlawi, who was a graduate from the institute in Saharanpur known as Mazahir al-Ulum, the second in rank after Deoband is Mazahir al-Ulum. Darul Ulum Deoband is in Deoband, and Mazahir al-Ulum is in the city of Saharanpur. And from Saharanpur, they studied a Gujarati by the name of Yusuf Mutala from Gujarat, who was sent to England under the instructions of Maulana Muhammad Zakaria Kandahlawi and under the finance of some rich men in the 70s, one of them being a very rich Memon from Scotland, Dundee. They purchased a hospital in Bury, and Maulana Muhammad Zakaria Kandahlawi visited England in 1975, and he laid the foundations of the first Darul Ulum for the Deobandis in 1975. And Maulana Muhammad Zakaria had 114 disciples, amongst them Yusuf Mutala, one of them, who was sent to England and made the principle of this Darul Ulum, which stands till this day. This is Saharanpur. The great book al-Muhannad al-Mufannad of Khalil Ahmad Saharanpuri, Maulana Ilyas, Maulana Zakaria, and a lot of these Saharanpuris that you have here in England. The one who is from Blackburn known as Mufti Shabbir. They all studied, they're all from Saharanpur, Mazahir Ulum. None of them went to Deoband. The atmosphere in Deoband is a bit different. Deoband is open, he has Sufism, but not to the extent of the Saharanpuris. That's why we find that the Saharanpuris are indulged and drowned in their tasawwuf. Are you guys with me, or you're lost? So  don't for a second think that the Deobandis are weak. they have had a mass production of graduates. The Salafis are still on zero. A few graduates from Medina. And if you were to ask many of these graduates what Saharanpur is, and what's the haqiqah of this madrasa and the Deobandis, they would be just as ignorant as many of you were before I informed you of this. If you don't know the basis and the history of your enemies, how are you going to fight against them? All the Darul Ulooms that we have in England are all under the influence of Saharanpur. If you are a graduate from Saharanpur, you are known as Mazahiri because of Mazahirul Uloom. Are you with me or you're lost? On the course that we plan to do, inshallah, which Allah will make it happen this summer, is to teach the students of knowledge all this which I am telling you now, put it into a presentation, and to educate the Tullabul Ilm about the history and the strengths and the achievements of our enemies who live amongst us, and we see them on a day-to-day basis. End up in our discussion in the biography of Abul Wafa Sana'Allāh Amritsari rahmatullah alayhi. As we know, that I mentioned before, that the Shaykh studied with Nadvi Hussain Dehlavi and obtained an ijazah from him and became from amongst the students of Nadvi Hussain Dehlavi. After that, the Shaykh, he went to Saharanpur. This Shaykh had guts and courage. So he went and studied in Saharanpur under these Deobandi scholars, and he obtained an ijazah from them. Now somebody may ask the question and say, oh, is it permissible for us to go and study in a Deobandi madrasa? Hold your horses, hold your horses. The Shaykh has already studied with the Salafi shuyukh and graduated, and can differentiate between haqq and batil and that which is wrong. The Shaykh went to study there for a purpose, and the purpose will become clear now. Now when the Shaykh once debated with the Hanafis in Mirpur, in Jammu Kashmir, when the Hanafis came to debate and they said to the Shaykh, you're debating with us from the Salafis, we want to see your certificates and ijazat. He said, here, there you go. I've got one from Mazar al-Ulum. I've even studied there. Debate with me now. I know everything about you guys. Do you understand? Use that against them. Then the Shaykh didn't stop there. After Saharanpur, the Shaykh decided to travel to Deoband. And Deoband was known to teach al-Ulum al-Aqliyah, Mantiq, rhetoric, Ilm al-Kalam. So the Shaykh went to study all these sciences from them so that he could master these sciences which the Deobandis were utilizing in debating. So the Shaykh said, let me go there and just study with the scholars. Let me master these sciences. Just like Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah did. So the Shaykh mentions himself that after Saharanpur, I decided that let me go to Deoband now. So he studied the books of Mantiq and Ilm al-Kalam. And he studied the books of Usul al-Fiqh and all the other sciences. The Shaykh, he just went and clocked everything that was there. And he mentions himself, he says that I even went and attended how the Deobandis would teach Hadith. So I could make a comparison between the Salafi shuyukh and how the Deobandi sheikhs were teaching. And he said, in particular, my Shaykh al-Mannan Wazeerabadī. And he mentioned here, he said, you know what was the difference between studying Hadith between the scholars of the Sunnah, the al-Hadith, the Salafis, and the Deobandis, Hanafis? Is that the Deobandis, whenever they would come a Hadith opposing their Madhhab, they would make ta'wil of the Hadith. And the Hadith would accept those Hadith. This was the ultimate difference, fundamental difference between when the Salafis teach hadith and study hadith and when the Deobandis, and this difference remains hatta as-sa'a, till this day. The methodology, our manhaj of studying hadith and the manhaj of the Deobandis. And the Shaykh, he said, I used to have a methodology that I would attend the classes of the Deobandi scholars who would teach Aqeedah. And whenever I found that their Aqeedah opposed the Hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I would start debating the teachers. And in particular, Mahmud al-Hasan al-Deobandi, Shaykh Mahmud al-Hasan al-Deobandi, the grand Shaykh of the Deobandis, known as Shaykh al-Hind. He said, I didn't do this to put these sheikhs down or to humiliate them. This was not my intention, like it is of some students. He said, I would ask them so that they would understand that why are they making ta'weel of these ahadith. And he said, let me mention to you that some of the troubles and trials and tribulations I faced when I went and studied there. And he talked about an incident that happened to me that I can never forget in my life, even if I tried to forget it. And he goes, this lesson or this story taught me a lesson that every time in my life when I confronted a difficulty, I would think about that story and it would give me respite. And he goes, the story goes about the Shaykh Mahmud al-Hasan al-Deobandi, who was in charge of all the teachers of the Deobandi madrasa. And he goes, I would ask him questions openly in every single lesson. And he goes, because of me asking him a lot of questions, a lot of the time in the class would be spent just between me and him, and as though the other students were not there. He goes, when I decided to take permission from him at the time of graduating of our last meeting, he said, Mahmud al-Hasan Deobandi said, he goes, the students really complained about you a lot. They say that you wasted a lot of their time by asking questions. And I said that if anybody intends to ask a question, then let him ask question, regardless of whether that question is correct or incorrect, whether it's important. Let him ask. And he says, it's appropriate for you to know that you should be happy because what you have been given, a lot of animosity and hatred will be there. Because he said, Mahmud al-Hasan said, you should be happy and you should be known that the one who has been granted a lot of knowledge will always be opposed and will always be jealous of. SubhanAllah. Look at that. If you have knowledge, others will envy you. Others will be jealous of you. And wallahi, this is present. He said, tears started to flow from my eyes when I heard this. And he goes, this, what Mahmud al-Hasan Deobandi said to me, remained with me all the time when I finished. Whenever I confronted trials and tribulations and when people were jealous of me, I remember what he said. And he said, I remembered a line of poetry in Arabic. هم يحسدوني وشر الناس كلهم من عاش في الناس يوما غير محسود. So Abu al-Wafa Sana'Ullah Amritsari was a graduate from Darul Ulum Deoband as well, and from Saharanpur. Next time a Deobandi comes to you, let him know that, listen, one of our own scholars graduated and your great scholars testified to the greatness of his knowledge. Are you guys with me or lost? Is the biography of the Shaykh not inspiring? And had you have thought that there was a Shaykh amongst the Salafi shuyukh that had reached, after graduating from Saharanpur and Deoband, from Mazahir al-Ulum and Darul Ulum Deoband, the Shaykh decided to go to a place called Kanpur. And he said that there was a Shaykh who was famously known as Shaykh Ahmad al-Kanpuri, or Kanpuri, who was very famously known for teaching the books of mantiq, rhetoric, and ilm al-kalam, and books of hadith. He used to teach at an institute called Faiz-e Am. So because I studied there the books that needed to be studied. Whilst in Kanpur, the Shaykh had the desire to teach hadith, and he participated in the gatherings of teaching hadith. So the Shaykh said, when it came to studying hadith, he studied with the Salafi scholars like Shaykh al-Mannan Wazeerabadī and Shaykh al-Isla Nadvi, and in Deoband with the likes of Mahmud al-Hasan al-Hanafi al-Deobandi, and in Kanpur with Ahmad al-Kanpuri. And every single teacher had a specific method of teaching. And the Shaykh had studied from all of them and benefited from all of them in their method of teaching. Although preference was given to the Salafi ulama, no doubt, because the Shaykh was Salafi. And he said, I graduated from Kanpur in the year 1892 with 7 other colleagues graduating with me. And he goes that, and the ulama have said, when the Shaykh graduated from Faiz-e Am in Kanpur, the Shaykh's status and rank in knowledge became apparent to all the people that were there. It was written in his certificate, Al-Mahir Al-Kamil Wal-Alim Al-Fadi Al-Dhaki, and so forth. And he said the difference between Shaykh Ahmad al-Kanpuri, although he was a Hanafi, he wasn't muta'assib, bigoted in his madhhab. And whenever Shaykh ThanāʻAllāh would ask him questions in a right, good, mannerly form, happily form, he would answer. And because of this, Abul Wafa ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī decided to study with him. After graduating from Kanpur, the Shaykh studied medicine. Although he graduated in medicine, he didn't use this to earn any money, or he never became famous for this. And he said the reason why he studied medicine is because in Kanpur, the Shaykh that he studied with used to also teach medicine, so he studied medicine with him. After he got these certificates from these famous institutes from Mazahir al-Ulum, Kanpur, Saharanpur, from al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī, from Nadhir Hussain al-Dahlawi, he decided to go and study at Punjab University. And there he got this certificate of Al-Darajatul Aliyah license known as Maulvi Fadil. Like you say, like a bachelor's. In today's time. And in those days to get that certificate was very, very difficult. Only a few people would be granted. And ThanāʻAllāh Amritsarī, he flew flying colors and easily got this certificate. Jami'atu Punjab University. That was in the year 1902. So after the Shaykh studying all this, then he decided that he wanted to teach. Now the time came for him to teach, enter the arena of teaching. And today, we have somebody who studies a bit of Arabic in Egypt, completes the Medina University books or Muhammad ibn Saud Arabic books, and starts teaching here. Or some who've never traveled, fake that they've studied with this Shaykh and they study with that Shaykh. And as Shaykh Wasiullah was laughing when we once said, and the most amazing thing is that all the Shaykhs that he mentions are all dead. So we can't even verify whether he studied with these people. When I was mentioning one particular person in the UK to Shaykh Wasiullah, the Shaykh said, I bet all the Shaykhs are dead. I said, Shaykh, they're all dead. So they start teaching. They start teaching books of usul. They start becoming muhaqqiqs. They start writing their autobiographies in the third person and so forth. And look at this Shaykh Abul Wafa ThanaʻAllāh Amritsari rahmatullah alayh. This is why our Shaykh Muhammad Rais Nadvi rahmatullah alayh advised me, Ya Bunay, oh my son, don't write no books until you graduate from Medina University. La tasta'jil ya bunay. Don't be hasty. And somebody who was studying with me at that time, who was with me, and I am no longer with him, and I free myself from him, because I was joining the ranks of the Ikhwani Muflis, Ali Hassan Khan, and his group, started writing books. Could not read sentences of Arabic properly. Started writing books. Started publishing books and writing books. And as the famous mathal goes, Man ista'jala shay'an qabla awanihi uqiba bi hurmanihi. Shaykh Abul Wafa ThanaʻAllāh Amritsari says, after I returned back and graduated from Punjab University and graduated from Kanpur, I was appointed as a teacher in the madrasa in Amritsar known as Ta'yidul Islam. And I started to teach the books of Dars-e-Nizami. Whilst I sat in the classroom teaching my students, my heart was somewhere else. He said my heart was in research and tahqiq. This was after the year 1902. You can calculate from the time he was born after graduating from Punjab University. He goes, and I started to look at what was present within the Muslim communities and societies from here. And he said, I found two groups of people attacking Islam. The first group, the Christians, and the second group, the Arya, a sect from within the Hindus. And just then, the sect of Qadiani was born. And before I decided to research on the Qadianis, the great grand Salafi scholar and the teacher of Abul Wafa ThanaʻAllāh Amritsari, I say, and a student of Nadir Hussain Dehlavi, and my hero, Abu Sa'id Muhammad Hussain al-Batalwi, rahmatullah alayh, was refuting them. And the Shaykh said, I had a passion since I was small, that debating used to run in my blood. And to read the books of the enemies and to read books with regards to deviated sects was a passion which I had at a young age, and Allah had blessed me to master this science. So I decided to start with the Qadianis and to assist the major Shaykh Abu Sa'id Muhammad Hussain al-Batalwi, the senior student of Nadir Hussain Dehlavi rahmatullah alayh, and my favorite scholar from amongst all the students of Nadir Hussain Dehlavi, to him and Bashir Sahsawani. And he said, I benefited from the books of the Salaf, from the books of Shawkani, Ibn Hajar, Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Hazm, Ibn Taymiyyah, and Shah Waliullah Dehlavi rahmatullah alayh, and the books of Ghazali. And he said, do you know why I decided to refute the people of Bid'ah? Do you know why I decided to refute the people who call towards atheism and disbelief in Islam? He said, because I read the statement of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah said that scholar is not a scholar who does not refute the atheists of the Malahida and the Mubtadi'ah of his time, then that person is not to be considered a scholar. Allahu Akbar. Then there are those who say refutation is a waste of time. Are you with me? If you are tired, we will stop. Just tell me. That's why he said that the manhaj of refuting Ahlul Bidah, the Malahida, the Christians, the Hindus, that the sound methodology of refuting is to combine and adopt the methodology of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. That when you refute the Aqlaniyah, the rationalists, those who only reason with you with logic, بالأدلة العقلية والنقلية, with rational proofs as well as proofs from the Quran and the Sunnah. And after that, the Shaykh gave in his resignation. He said that teaching, although he had the desire of teaching, but there was something greater than teaching for him. So the Shaykh, he moved from Amritsar to Malar Kotla, and there he was appointed as the chief head of all the teachers. That's, I think, in 1898, and he remained there for 2 years, and then he returned back in 1900s to Amritsar, and that's when he started his movement of defending Islam, writing books, newspapers, magazines, giving khutbahs, having debates, organizing conferences, etc. So that was with regards to the Shaykh's education. Now I'm going to mention the teachers of al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari. Are you ready? From amongst his teachers, the first one we will mention is Sayyid Nadir Hussain Dahlawi rahmatullah alayhi. The second is al-Muhaddith al-Hafidh al-Mannan al-Wazeerabadī rahmatullah alayhi. The third is the famous Deobandi Shaykh Mahmud al-Hasan al-Deobandi. The fourth is the famous Shaykh of the Hanafis, Ahmad Hasan al-Kanpuri. The fifth is Shaykh Ahmadullah Amritsari. That was with regards to the shuyukh of al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari. Now with regards to the students of al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari. The first one is Abdullah al-Thani al-Amritsari. The second is Abdullah Ma'mar al-Amritsari. The third is Shaykh Habibullah al-Amritsari. The fourth is Shaykh Babu Muhammad Ishaq al-Amritsari. The fifth is Ata'ullah ibn Shaykh ThanāʻAllāh Amritsari. He is the son of al-Wafa Thana Allah Amritsari. The sixth is the Shaykh's daughter Fatima bint al-Shaykh ThanāʻAllāh. The seventh is the famous Shaykh Muhammad Ismail al-Salafi rahimahullah. Also including Shaykh Dawood Raz rahimahullah, and Shaykh Badi'uddin Sindhi Rashidi rahimahullah ta'ala. As we know that Badi'uddin Sindhi, the fifth was Ahmadullah al-Amritsari. The next thing which we are going to discuss is the Shaykh's books. Are you with me? From amongst the books that the Shaykh authored, the first is his books in tafsir. He wrote a tafsir of the Quran in the Arabic language. It's called Tafsir al-Qur'ani bi Kalam al-Rahmani. And the Shaykh has made tafsir of the whole Quran with only from the Quran, which is the best way to give tafsir of the Quran. And this is the most amazing way of giving the whole tafsir of the Quran. The whole of the Quran, the Shaykh made tafsir of it with regards to the tafsir of the Quran, with the ayats of the Quran. And this, as Shaykh Asim al-Qaryuti said to me 15 years ago, he said that this is the best tafsir of the Quran that I have come across with the ayat of the Quran. The tafsir has been published by Darus Salam Publications, and an amazing introduction has been written and revised by Shaykh Safiur Rahman al-Mubarakpuri rahmatullah alayh. And I advise all the students of knowledge to buy this tafsir. Remember, this tafsir of the Quran is only with the ayats of the Quran. So the Shaykh will explain one ayat with another ayat, the whole Quran. Are you with me? So a student of knowledge, Tafsir al-Qur'ani bi Kalami Rahman, to try to obtain this tafsir. The second one is at-Tafsir al-Thanā'i, which is the tafsir of the Quran in 8 volumes in the Urdu language. And this is probably from the most important books that the Shaykh wrote. The third book that the Shaykh wrote in the Arabic language is called Bayanul Furqan ala Ilm al-Bayan. And the tafsir the Shaykh he wrote is based upon Ilm al-Ma'ani, Ilm al-Bayan, and so forth. The next tafsir which he wrote is called At-Tafsir bil-Rai. And he wrote this tafsir refuting those who make tafsir with their rai, with their opinion. And then he wrote a risala on ayatun mutashabihat. In reality, this ayatun mutashabihat is a muqaddama for his Arabic and Urdu tafsir. Then he wrote the 6th book of his tafsir is Burhanut Tafasir fi Raddi ala Sultan al-Tafasir, which was basically a refutation of a Christian priest who wrote something with regards to the tafsir of the Quran in 1932. Burhanut Tafasir fi Raddi ala Sultan al-Tafasir. Then the Shaykh wrote another book on tafsir called Tashrihul Quran. Then he wrote another book called Dalilul Quran. Then he wrote another book called Dalilul Furqan, against the refutation of those who only of the Quraniyun who don't accept hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then he wrote another book called Ta'limul Quran. Then he wrote another book called Al-Quran wal Kutub al-Ukhra. Then he wrote another book called Al-Quranul Azim. And then he wrote another book called Qur'ani Qa'idatun Thanā'iyyah for the kids. Then he wrote a refutation on the Qadiani's tafsir, Batshul Qadir fi Raddi ala Tafsir al-Qadiani al-Kabir. Then he wrote another refutation called Kitabur Rahman. Then he wrote another book called Al-Fawzul Azim. Then he wrote another book on tafsir called At-Tahaddi fi Tafsir wal-Firar minhu. Then he wrote a small book called Al-Kalimatu Tayyibah. It is a small shar of an explanation of Kalimatu Tawheed from the ayats of the Quran. These are some of the books that the Shaykh wrote. Also he wrote 12 سورة كريمة مع ترجمة معانيها وبيان الفوائد والأوراد فيها. So he wrote 12 surahs with the meanings, the translation of its meanings, and mentioning the fawaid and the awrad or the ayats to recite within it. This was with regards to the books of tafsir about 19 books he wrote in tafsir. Now we move on to his books on hadith. Are you with me? He wrote his own 40 hadith collection called al-Arba'in al-Thanā'iyyah. He also wrote al-Mi'atu al-Thanā'iyyah. He wrote a book called Khasa'il al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the attributes of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He wrote a book called al-Khitab ila al-Mawdudi, a letter to al-Mawdudi. He wrote a book called al-Hayatul Masnuna, how to live according to the Sunnah. He wrote a book called Ittiba'u Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is my favorite book he wrote, al-Hadith al-Nabawi wa taqleed al-Shakhsi, the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and blindly following. He wrote a book called al-Hadith al-Nabawi. He wrote a book called Salatul Mu'mineen fi Raddi ala Salatil Mursaleen, a refutation of a Hanafi with regards to the Prophet's prayer. He wrote a book called Ithbatul Hadith. He wrote a book called Burhanul Hadith or Burhanul Hadith bi Ahsanil Hadith. He wrote another book called Tasdiqul Hadith. He wrote a book called Difa'u Anil Hadith, which I printed, a refutation of the Rafidah. He wrote a book called Bayanul Haq bi Jawabi Balagil Haq, Difa'u Anil Hadith. He wrote a book called Tafsiru bir Riwayah. He wrote a book called Kalimatul Haq fi Raddi ala Shar'atil Haq. Then we come to the books of fiqh. He wrote a book called Al-Fiqh wal-Faqih. And then he wrote a book called Al-Ijtihadu wa-Taqleed. He wrote a book called Usul al-Fiqh. He wrote a book called Amin wa Raful Yadain. He wrote a book called Qira'atul Fatiha Khalf al-Imam. And then his fatawa called Al-Fatawa al-Thanā'iyyah in 4 volumes. Then he wrote a book called Ash-Shari'atu wa-Tariqah. And this book looks very interesting. He wrote Al-Islam wal-Qanun al-Britani, Islam and the British Constitution. He wrote a book called Hidayatul Zawjain, guidance for the spouses. He wrote a book called Assalamu Alaikum. He wrote a book called Sammakumul Muslimin. I believe this is in refutation of those who say that you should only call yourselves Muslims. Then he wrote a book called Adabu Wahdatis Saf. Then he wrote a book called Al-Iftira'u al-Wahhabiyyah, the slandering and the accusations on the Wahhabis. And then he wrote a book called Amanatu Ahli al-Hadith fi Raddi ala Imamati al-Wahhabiyyah. Then he wrote a book called Al-Fiqh Huwa al-Quran. Then with regards to the books of Aqidah, he wrote a book called Sham'ut Tawheed. He wrote a book called Nurut Tawheed. He wrote a book called Madhhab Ahli al-Hadith, which is our book which we are studying, book of Aqidah and Manhaj. He wrote a book called Al-Islam wa Ahlul Hadith. He wrote a book called Al-Ittiba' inda Ahli al-Hadith. He wrote a book called Ittiba'u Salaf. Then he wrote Futuhat Ahli al-Hadith, the victories of the Ahlul Hadith. Then he wrote a book called Al-Faisal fi Ilm al-Ghayb. He wrote a book called Rad'ul Bid'ah, Hayatul Izz wal Karama, another book. Then he wrote a book called Nadratu al-Harakat al-Wahhabiyyah. He wrote a book called Risalatul fil Muharram. He wrote a book called Mada Yuridul Islam. He wrote another book called Al-Ihtifal bil Mawlid, celebrating the Prophet's birthday. He wrote a book called أهداف الدين فضائل الإسلام. Then he wrote another book called تعظيم الأبرار على تعليم الجبار. Then he wrote وفاة النبي في الرد على حياة النبي, with regards to the Prophet ﷺ being alive. Then he wrote هادم القلعة على هادم الباطل. These are all books on Aqidah. اللوامع الإلهية على السوائق الإلهية. أهداف المصلين في إصلاح عقائد المصلين. And then he wrote a book called al-Hidayah wa Taqwiyatul Iman. And then the Shaykh, he has books on the refutation of the Christians. And then he has a whole section on the refutations of the Qadianis. Many, many books that the Shaykh wrote. Refutations of the Hindus. And these books almost reaching 158. We find that many of the scholars have praised the Shaykh, like I mentioned. And with regards to the Shaykh, I hope that the Shaykh has inspired you. That the Shaykh, he died in 1368 after Hijrah. 1368 after Hijrah. 1948, from what I understand. 15th of March, 1948 is the year that the Shaykh died in. 1368. And that was with regards to Abu al-Wafa Sana'Ullah Amritsari rahmatullah alayhi's brief biography. We have one issue remaining. The issue of where the Shaykh fell into error with regards to al-Asma wa Sifat, which I will deliver next week or in our next lesson, inshallah, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.